to Media Melanie Talks TV. I'm Melanie, and today I'm back to talk about School Spirits Season 2. We've only got a pair of episodes left, so today I will get into previewing Episode 7, which is called Anatomy of a Fallout Shelter, and just go over some of the lingering questions we have, maybe what we can expect from these last two episodes. And something that I'm hoping we also get very soon is a Season 3 renewal announcement. I am hoping we will have more to talk about when this season ends. I do expect there to be some sort of twist or cliffhanger, especially given how the first season ended. And we still have a lot of unanswered questions here. Mostly, one of the biggest ones for me is, let's say Maddie does get her body back. How exactly does that happen? And what will that mean with her relationship with the ghosts at Split River High School? Will she still be able to see them? I think the Maddie and Wally of it all is one reason why I think some people do ship them and wouldn't mind if Maddie stayed at Split River High School forever. But for me, that would be such a tragic ending. I want our girl to get her body back. As much as I do love Maddie and Wally together, I'm kind of getting the feeling that Wally has grown a lot this season. We've learned a lot about who he was based on the reunion episode, and also experienced quite a bit of growth with his character in terms of self-awareness, overcoming some of his traumas. So I guess if Maddie does get her body back, maybe we can hope for Wally to move on, so that way they both get some kind of closure and we're not left thinking, oh, the tragedy of it all. But before I get more into the episode 7 preview, please be sure that you go ahead, like this video, hit that subscribe button, and stick with me for the rest of School Spirit Season 2. I also talk about other dark TV shows like Severance on Apple TV+, Paradise on Hulu, and The White Lotus on HBO Max, and I'll be covering lots of other great shows this year. And hey, if there's a show you'd like to see me talk about, I can't guarantee I'll cover it, but drop it down in the comments, and I will, of course, take that into account. And coming off of the last episode, can I just say I am still thinking about that David Bowie dance routine. Hands down, one of the best moments of the season, if not the entire series. Love, love, love everything about that, and I am still spooning over those choreographed dance moves. So, let's talk about Episode 7. As of the recording of this video, there are no promo pictures available, so I will not be able to show them. But we can definitely go over the clues that we have been given about Episode 7. So if you don't want to know and you want to be surprised, this might not be the video for you. But for everybody who's dying for every little School Spirit smidgen and speck that you can get out there, that is what I'm here for. Episode 7, it is called Anatomy of a Fallout Shelter, and I actually found a couple of different descriptions, so I'm going to go ahead and read them both. First, Janet resorts to violence to escape Mr. Martin, then demands Simon take her back to school. She finally provides answers to the ghosts about her work with Mr. Martin while he uses Mr. Anderson's body to terrorize the living kids. I love the fact that they put the word answer right here in the description. Nothing better than getting some answers. And what have her and Mr. Martin been up to for all of these years? Are we going to learn more about this scar? Who actually started the fire? Which, by the way, don't miss my theory video covering that topic, because I dove into some of the suspects who I think could be behind the fire if it is not Janet or Mr. Martin. Be sure to drop your comments, because if we do get an answer, wouldn't it be nice to know that you were right? So, the other episode description I found for Episode 7 is pretty similar, but just a little bit different, so why not go into both of them, right? Janet is finally ready to give answers. Okay, we get that. While Mr. Martin hatches a plan, Maddie reevaluates her relationships with Wally and Simon and weighs the pros and cons of getting her body back. At the same time, Quinn makes a discovery. What kind of discovery is Quinn going to make? She's been kind of a secondary character here, although it's been great having her involved with Rhonda, them formulating this friendship, especially over that Foolish Girl song, which was one of the top needle drops this season, along with that cover of Let Go. Chef's kiss. And the singer of that is actually in the Reddit group, which is very cool. So head over there and say hello to her and give her some props for that cover of Let Go. And in terms of other clues that we can garner going into this episode, I've been pointing out some of the unboxing clues from the School Spirits marketing campaign they have. They've mailed out promotional boxes to various influencers. Kristen Maldonado, I will put a link to her unboxing video here in the video description, but I've been mentioning some of the clues she's been unboxing every week, so did want to highlight those, and maybe those can help us get a little bit of context on what we can expect. The first clue that she unboxed this week was a school spirits oar. We know that they are at the cabin. We had that big cliffhanger where Simon left Maddie/Janet at the dock to do some last minute breathing before he brought her back to the school. Now, I had surmised, Simon, what are you doing? Why would you leave her alone? You ruined everything. And, maybe she would run off. But we know she did not run off. Somehow, Mr. Anderson's body, possessed by Mr. Martin, snuck around everybody at the cabin and ended up in a face-off with Janet/Maddie at the dock. We have the biggest face-off of the season. We've got two of our ghosts possessing bodies here on this dock. So the oar of it all. In the initial trailer or preview teaser for School Spirit Season 2, there was a scene where we saw Janet swinging an oar. We also had a scene where we saw Maddie's body floating underwater. Are we going to get that here? Is Janet going to use this oar to attack Mr. Anderson on that dock? Is he going to fight back? And if so, is that the scene we see with Maddie's body floating underneath the water? I'm gonna say maybe, because if she is floating there, we know that she does get back to the school. So if the floating isn't happening at the lake, like where is it happening? But I've got to imagine that this oar will come into play here at the cabin, and it makes sense since we have seen Janet swinging that oar in trailers and teasers before. What does that mean for Mr. Martin? Will she successfully attack him? As the episode descriptions read, Mr. Martin and Mr. Anderson, they obviously have a plan and are still terrorizing the teens. So whatever does transpire, it seems like everybody will be getting away from the cabin and back to the school at some point. So we will see. Another clue in here was a pottery kit, and obviously that's got to have something to do with Yuri. In the last episode, we had that Shuri content with them after Wally's reunion, kind of coming back together. What an episode that was, by the way. I mean, again, it sucked learning that Wally was a bully. I hated to see that. And it hit Charlie differently, who it turns out Charlie was his own biggest bully. But really great to see him and Yuri back together at the end. Are they going to make more pottery together? Does this mean they will end up in a love story? I'm really excited to see what happens for these two characters. But it also makes me think, could the pottery kit be a clue that maybe there still is some sort of dark side to Yuri? I said in my last video, maybe I owe him an apology. Maybe he's not sus. Maybe there's really nothing nefarious about him after all, but we know he knew Janet and potentially has more information. So I'm not gonna fully let Yuri off the hook yet, but I am interested to see how this pottery kit plays into it all. Good Yuri, bad Yuri, what do you guys think? Drop a comment. One of the more interesting items in this week's clue box is a container of naked cake protein pancakes. Naked pancakes. Okay, nudity, naked. Are we going to get some kind of a love scene here, perhaps between Yuri and Charlie? Or will Maddie and Wally have a big moment? There was something we saw in one of those teasers or trailers with Maddie and Wally getting it on and kind of in this red light, which I had surmised maybe was within one of the scars or hellscapes, but I also can't see them engaging in that sort of activity within a hellscape, which is supposed to be very traumatic. So, I don't know. Who's getting naked, you guys? I mean, could it even be Xavier and Nicole for that matter? I don't think that they're quite there yet, given they just discovered they were talking to each other on the ghost board. Who are we putting our bets on to get naked and maybe have some post-coital pancakes? Is that what's gonna happen here? I would love to know what you think. If I'm rooting for anybody, it's gonna be Maddie and Wally, obviously. And we did have that question of Maddie questioning whether or not she wants to get her body back within these episode descriptions. So maybe they have like a final last hurrah, final Maddie and Wally moment before she does end up either getting her body back or, I don't know, Janet takes off into the sunset with it. I mean, that's still a little bit up in the air, but either way, we could have some nudity coming at us, friends, and I'm probably not angry about it. There is also a hat that says trauma is energy. This has been a theme, of course, with the scars. The fact that we've had this mention of serotonin and dopamine, some sort of chemical reaction, chemical energy at play here. So could this trauma and energy thing play into maybe somebody crossing over, them getting further into the scars now that we know that these exit signs are here? Or something that I mentioned in my video about who started the fire, is there some sort of other supernatural situation at play where Split River, either the high school or the town, is maybe built on some kind of sacred land, and there's this overarching energy of some kind making this place a trap for souls? I mean, anything's possible, so we will see how the hat does come into play. There is also a coin, which looks kind of like one of these little pog coins, or potentially, like Kristen said in her video, like a bingo type of marker or something, but it's got the devil on it, which we know used to be the school's mascot before the crash of the marching band, and those patches did come into play with Mr. Anderson as well, which led to him getting disgraced regarding taking the money from those uniforms. How does that come into play? Do we learn more about the marching band potentially? Because one of the episode descriptions did say that Quinn will make a discovery. Does this blue devil coin have something to do with the discovery? And if so, what exactly is it? We know that they've learned about the scars and that there is some kind of connection, that there is an exit door. So I'm interested to see, does the devil of it all come into play? I mean, could this be a hellscape? I know there's people in my comments every week that say this is not a great idea. It is not a hellscape. Split River is not built on hell. It's not some portal to hell. But you know what? All I'm saying is we can't rule anything out. And the fact that there is heavy devil imagery throughout season 1 and now season 2, I don't know. I'm not ruling it out. So I did mention my theory video this week was on who started the fire, and based on the last episode, there were some questions regarding the fire and the scars. Number 1, who are the girls in the scars? We have half-burned face girl, which I do think is probably Janet, just looking different. But if it is Janet in there, it does make me think that might not be Janet's scar, because it doesn't make sense she would be in there haunting her own scar. Could it be Mr. Martin's scar? Which could potentially make sense because of this other ghostly apparition, the brunette woman with the non-burned face who says they needed more time. I keep going back to the fact that I think this is Mr. Martin's fiance, Alice. The actress who plays this ghostly apparition is listed as Alice on IMDb, which again could just be a user-generated thing, maybe not correct, because I'm questioning it over the fact that there is a picture of Alice Thompson at Wally's reunion back in episode 6. How could there possibly be two Alices if they're not connected? Maybe this is not Mr. Martin's fiance, but she looked older than the other ghostly apparition, looked more like the age of Mr. Martin. In my fire video, I also surmised perhaps Mr. Martin's fiance was a teacher at the school, and maybe she kept teaching there up until the time Wally was a student, and she was honored there with a picture because she died after her time at Split River High School. I'm not sure still how the Alice pieces connect, but if I'm guessing, I think that that woman in that scar is more related to Mr. Martin than she is to Janet. And be sure you go back and watch that fire theory video, because this is something I'm hoping we get answers on. And again, it's always fun to speculate who it is, so that way you can give yourself a pat on the back and take the W if in fact you're right. So All I'm saying is if one of my guesses is right, and one of them is Janet's father, by the way, like a leading suspect here, I will be back here congratulating myself, or I will take the L because you know what? You gotta be self-aware and admit when you're wrong. But moving into this episode, it does seem like we are going to get back to Split River High School, and let's say they do attempt to do a body swap. How exactly does that work? If a big part of this is having this certain level of the dopamine serotonin balance in order to make a soul vulnerable for another entity to enter it, how do they reverse engineer that and get it back? How would they even be able to trick Mr. Martin into giving Mr. Anderson his body back? And another big question that I'm asking myself is, does Mr. Anderson even want to re-enter the world of the living? He seems pretty comfortable here golfing at Split River High School. I've got to think if there was any sort of driving factor for him to return to the world of the living, could it be related to Sandra? Was that authentically Mr. Anderson who has been spending time with Sandra, going to meetings, getting to know her? Or do we think it could have maybe been Mr. Martin inhabiting his body for a longer time? I don't necessarily buy that. I think this could potentially be the first time Mr. Martin does enter Mr. Anderson's body. I have just got to think too that Mr. Anderson had a relationship with Maddie before, she ended up missing. So I've got to think he's going to be fighting for Maddie to get her body back, but will he be fighting the same way himself? Does he have enough to even go back to? And another thing I would love to know, are we going to get an answer or more context on this season in general, whether here in episode 7 or in episode 8 is Maddie's dad? That was a pretty big drop when Xavier discovered that he did in fact talk to Maddie's dad at the hospital when he was having an out-of-body experience. One of the most fascinating revelations this season, and I would really like to know how that is going to work out. It's interesting because he was a fisherman. He died and drowned from a fishing trip. But the fact that Sandra bought this cabin on a lake, and lakes have to do with fishing, is there some way the Nears family will end up somehow living happily ever after at the cabin that initially drove the wedge between Maddie and her mom in the first place, and she used her college money? I am dying to know how this season ends up. Are we going to get a season 3? I sure hope so, because then we will have lots to talk about in between seasons. So, drop your thoughts, drop your theories, tell me what you think is going to happen in episode 7, Anatomy of a Fallout Shelter. And then we've only got one episode after that. And if you've been following me here through the season, you know I'm releasing a reaction and review for each episode. I am doing a theory video and then an episode preview just like this one. So be sure to like the video, hit that bell so you get notifications when new videos go up, and make sure you are subscribed. Again, I do talk about other dark TV shows, so stick with me if you love TV as much as I do. I really appreciate you tuning in, and I will be back again soon. My School Spirits episode 7 reaction and review will be up Thursday, and I will also have a theory video up this week as well. Thanks so much for watching. Media Melanie, clicking off.